You know that tune, right? Yeah, Andy Griffith Show. The trouble is, we're no longer in Mayberry, friends. We're no longer in Mayberry. Violence, the clash of profanity, immorality, and outright vocal, passionate opposition against the way of Christianity is all around. We're no longer in Mayberry, friends, and maybe Mayberry wasn't all it was cracked up to begin with. Kids are told that the Bible is just really a mere book of quaint fables and outdated poems. Teens are daily inundated by a hookup culture guided by a plethora of smartphone apps. And adults are faced with every vile vice imaginable through the portals of Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime and regular old TV. We're no longer in Mayberry, friends. There is an outright pull against the way of Jesus Christ. There's an outright pull against you and me to veer away from faithfulness and towards faithlessness. To walk away from faith in the faithful God. What should you and I expect in a culture like that? In an anti-God culture, what are we to expect? And how should we respond when everyone, it seems like, and everything is pulling us away from faithfulness to God and pulling us towards this path of walking away from trust in God? How should we respond? And why should we ultimately follow God when it seems like, honestly, everybody on that path of walking away from God appears to be having a blast? At least that's what they tell us. And there's this instant gratification, fun, satisfaction on demand all around. It's dangling right in front of our noses the moment we look at our phones or turn on the TV or go to the store. It's right there. To deny it, it's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? So how should we respond? What should we expect in an anti-God culture? How should we respond faithfully? What should we say? What should we do? How should we act? How should we think? And why should we remain faithful to God in a time when it seems like everyone and everything else is walking towards faithlessness? I want to invite you into a story this morning. It's going to be a little different. I want to invite you into a story of 4 young men who remained faithful in a culture that pulled them toward compromise with every device imaginable. These 4 young men were steadfast. They were faced a different land, a different education, different teachers, even different food. Everything was different, but something about them didn't change at all. At all. I want you to close your eyes for a moment. Imagine with me for a moment the great, glorious city of Babylon. Some of you are still looking at me. Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Close your eyes for a moment, just for a moment. I'll let you open them up in a second. You are in this great and glorious city of Babylon. And these 4 young men, though, are going to answer for us those questions. What should we expect? How should we respond? Why should we remain faithful? The year 605 BC, King Jehoiakim over Judah in the central city, Jerusalem, was now in captivity. The great King Nebuchadnezzar had besieged Jerusalem and was hauling people away in captivity. Now, Nebuchadnezzar didn't fully rout out everything and everybody in the city at this point, but he did take away a number of people and treasure. He had just heard that his father had died, and so he was heading back quickly to Babylon, or what would have been known as Shinar even. His father, King Nebuchadnezzar, his predecessor, had appointed him as king. Now close your eyes for a moment. You can open them. Aha! Yes, young boy. I tell you, this was the most glorious time to be alive. That was the time. Yes. What was your name again? Oh, Zebulez. All right. I tell you, this was an incredible time to be alive. Nebuchadnezzar, he just won the battle of Carchemish over the Egyptians and Assyrians near the Euphrates River. And he was so filled with battle lust that he routed the Egyptians out of that area, and he chased them all the way back to Egypt so they'd never bother him again. And on his way back from Egypt, Nebuchadnezzar and his great armies, they came by this other area called Judah and the central city Jerusalem, and they decided they would besiege that city. King Jehoiakim, a weak king, he quickly fell to our great armies, and the city was devastated. You could smell the smoke all in the air. The dust billowed from that old city. Crying women, screaming children echoed through the streets. We took a lot of gold and silver from their temple, and we carted it back to the treasury of our gods in Babylon and Shinar. And then word came through, though, that King Nebuchadnezzar's father, had died. And so King Nebuchadnezzar, he quickly left the area. But before doing that, he wanted all the young men of royal family and nobility, the smart ones, the handsome ones, the sharp ones, to come along with him. And of course, he had a plan. Nebuchadnezzar always had a plan. Oh, my name? My name. Melzar. I am the overseer of the king's students, appointed by Ashpenaz, chief official of all the officials of Babylon. So King Nebuchadnezzar, he stood up and he turned to my boss and he said, Ashpenaz, gather all the sharp young men, those who are well-muscled and have good brains and good in their intellect, and gather them all up, the royal family, the nobility, take them with us, because I want to have them in my personal service as workers in our kingdom. And I want you to teach them our literature and our language. I want them to become Babylonian in their way of thinking. I want them brainwashed into Babylon. You understand? Ashpenaz, my boss, he turned to, okay, I get it, sir, I get it. Yeah, okay. And then Ashpenaz turned to me. Melzar, get to it. You heard the king. Get to it. So all of us officials, we started scurrying around, and we gathered all these young men, and we took them back. But they had, four young men stood out. Four young men stood out. They had interesting Hebrew names. But their Hebrew names wouldn't work for Babylon. No. Their Hebrew names wouldn't work for Babylon. They needed to be named after Babylonian gods. And so Ashpenaz, my boss, he named them. Now, the first one was Daniel, whose name means God is my judge. He changed his name to Belteshazzar, which means Bel protect him. Hananiah was the second, which means the Lord is gracious. His name was changed to Shadrach, which means the command of Aku, another name of a Babylonian god. And then Mishael, which name means who is what God is. It's this name of praise in the Hebrew people. Who is what God is? We changed his name to Mishach, which means who is what Aku is, a name of praise to the god Aku. And then Azariah, his name meant the Lord has helped. Changed his name to Abednego, servant of Nego. And these 4 young boys, they were in a now, Zebulez, are you listening to me? Are you listening to me? Zebulez, they were in a different country, a different place now to learn. They had different teachers, different names. Everything was different, around different gods. But something about them didn't change. Instead, it would change us. It would change us. Now that Daniel, we had this giant banquet spread out before everyone. All these students gathered around, hundreds and hundreds of students, and there was this sumptuous display of all the king's choice food and wine. And the king said to Ashpenaz, I want them to have the food that I pick. It's got to be my food, because I'm the best, and I have the best taste of everybody. So it's got to be my kind of food, my kind of drink. So feed them just the way I like it, just the way it is supposed to be for the sacrifice of worship to our gods. And so we brought them in this banquet hall, all of these people, and we had pork roast, pork chops. We had bacon. We had rabbit, which tastes like chicken. And we had horse thigh, my favorite. All kinds of things. And then, of course, we had lots of different kinds of wine, and it was all spread before the feet of Marduk and Aku and Nego, and as a worship sacrifice. And there we were to dine in this giant feast before the gods of Babylon. And then Daniel stood up. And Daniel said to Ashpenaz, my boss, Sir, your generosity is unmatched. This display of food is extraordinary. We thank you for wanting to serve us and to provide for us. But I cannot eat this food. My friends and I, we have made a decision that we must honor our God, that we must remain faithful to Him, and we cannot therefore eat food that is not according to His way. And we cannot eat food that is to be sacrificed to your gods. So we cannot eat and we cannot drink from the king's table. Ashpenaz looked at him, and then Ashpenaz looked at me. What? Are you kidding me? I mean, this is the kind of food that everybody in Babylon would enjoy. I mean, everybody would want to eat and drink this kind of thing. Come on. And so I waited to see what my boss would say. And then Ashpenaz, he turned to Daniel. He said, why are you, wait a minute, Daniel. We like you. There was something about Daniel. In that moment, it was like this compassion, this mercy fell over our hearts for him. It was extraordinary. That we wanted to help him. We wanted to be kind to him. He had such respect, and he was so kind, and he was so articulate. But Ashpenaz turned back to Daniel, and he said, if I don't force you to eat this food, you're asking for my head. Because if you turn up weak and thin and famished, Nebuchadnezzar will kill me. You're asking for me to forfeit my life so that you can't eat the food. Can't you just make a compromise? It's just food. Just a little bit. I mean, come on. It's just food. No, sir. I'm resolute. I must honor God. So Ashpenaz, he threw his arms in the air and stormed off. And then here I was, trying to be a good boy, Melzar, and Daniel's staring at me. What? You heard what my boss said? Why are you looking at me like that? What can I do? I can't do anything. And then Daniel proposed a test. He said, "And sir, I ask that you would allow my friends and I, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, to for 10 days just eat vegetables and water." What? Vegetables and water? Like the carrots, potatoes, celery? No, they needed protein. We wanted these young men looking strong for the king, impressive. They just, you want to eat vegetables for 10 days. What? And water. Nothing. No grape juice. Nothing. Why do I always get stuck in the middle, Zebulez? I always get stuck in the middle. Ashpenaz over here. If Ashpenaz finds out about this, he'll have my head so that Nebuchadnezzar won't have his head. I'll be a goner. Why? Finally, I leaned over to Daniel. Because he was a good young boy. Probably, he was about 16 years old at the time. They were all about 15, 17 years old. I whispered, Daniel, okay. 10 days. That's it. No more. The moment I see you looking thin or famished or weakly, this is done. No more. Nothing. Okay. Daniel looked at me, and he agreed. The clock ticked by. I looked at my calendar. 1 day. 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5, 6. The 7th day seemed like it took forever. 8 days, 9 days, 10 days. And I rushed over to where Daniel and Hananiah and Azariah and Mishael, where they were staying, and I looked in and I got them, and then I lined them all up with all the other students to do a comparison, a test, because Daniel said, if we don't compare, then you can have what you will with us. You can do as you please. And I lined them all up. Hundreds of students. And there were the 4 Hebrew boys. They said they wanted to honor their God. And it was unbelievable. It was incredible. I couldn't believe it until I did believe it. These 4 young Hebrew boys were smarter, were stronger, looked healthier. We would have said fatter, but what we meant was that they looked stronger. And then everybody else, nobody looked as sharp and as strong as these 4 Hebrew boys. It was incredible. So Daniel looked at me with that look again, and I said, okay, Daniel, you can have your carrots and your broccoli and your cauliflower and your celery, your barley and grain and your water. It was just amazing. There was no other explanation that something divine had happened there, that their God had done something for them. Never could I explain that for 10 days you just have vegetables and water and look stronger and better than all the rest who were dining at the king's choice buffet. As time went on, Zebulez, these boys grew to be the smartest out of all the king's students, not just of their royal family, of everyone. They had a superior knowledge and wisdom. They had a superior intellect. And Daniel could even decipher visions and dreams. It was incredible. So for 3 years, that was the length of the king's university. 3 years, they were taught our literature and language. And Daniel and Hananiah and Mishael and Azariah, they ascended to the top of the class. It's amazing. Different teachers, different place, around different gods, and something about them never changed, though. Something about their God. Then the 3 years were complete. Ashpenaz ordered me, he said, all right, Melzar, gather everybody up. All your students, we're going to present them to King Nebuchadnezzar and see what he says. You better be on your best behavior, Melzar. Okay. So, we gathered everybody up, and everybody stood before King Nebuchadnezzar. And Nebuchadnezzar spoke with every single young man in that class. And at the end of it, he made a big announcement. He said, hear ye, I have inspected all the students, and no one is in comparison to Daniel, Hananiah. Actually, he used the Babylonian names. Belteshazzar, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. No one has risen to their intellect, to their ability to discern even visions and dreams, to understand our literature and language. They will immediately go in my personal service, King Nebuchadnezzar announced. Now, Ashpenaz turned to me, and he said, Melzar, you've done a really good job with these students. There were just four there. Wow. I turned to Ashpenaz, and I said, well, sir, I have worked hard for you, but there's something that happened that wasn't my work. It was the work of a different person. Their king, they call him, their God, this Yahweh. He did something amazing in these 4 boys that I've never seen before in my life. Then King Nebuchadnezzar cut me off again. Bring them all the 4. There. They will be chief among all the students, and I will bring them every decision, every matter, every question, every vision. They will be chief of my advisors. Bring them here. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah, they received a superior knowledge and wisdom. They seem to be given a superior place of service and a superior position of influence than everybody else. Daniel, looking back, Daniel even, he lived and served for more than 85 years beyond that and over more than one king, all the way to King Cyrus. It's incredible. Everyone was amazed. Something about them never changed. They were around all these different teachers and different food and different gods, and all of that didn't change what Daniel always said, I will honor my God. I must remain faithful to my God. I must remain steadfast to my God. I will honor him. And it changed me. It changed us. Because Daniel's God is the true king over everyone and everything. God delights in honoring those who humbly honor him. The Lord loves to be gracious to those who put their trust in him. Daniel and his friends, they received a superior wisdom and knowledge. They were given a superior place of service, a superior position of influence, because their God is the superior king over everyone and everything. They were faced with different teachers, a culture pulling them towards compromise, a surrounding that said, can you just give in a little? Can you just change this one little thing? But they remained faithful to their God. When you and I are faced with temptation. What can we expect? What should we expect in an anti-God world? What can we expect? God's people must anticipate life in a culture ripe with compromise. Don't be shocked by it when temptation dangles in front of your nose. And it will look like a tiny compromise. It will look like a slight little tweak, a little brushing over of this, a little sweeping under the rug, a little change of interpretation. Children, when you go to school, very soon, and your friends all want to tell you about the movies that they're watching, or the shows, or the social media apps that they're engaged in, and they say, come on, just go along, go with us. Go with God. We don't go along to get along, we go with God. Junior high, high school students, college students, when you're invited to the party and you know what's going to go on in that party, but if you don't go to that party, you're not going to be in the in crowd. You're not going to be invited to the next gathering, and they might even shame you in front of their friends. Or choose today to remain steadfast tomorrow. Resolve today to remain steadfast tomorrow. Daniel made a decision to be steadfast in his faithfulness to God before the temptation came. We have to anticipate, we have to expect a life in a culture ripe with compromise. It's everywhere around us. But when temptation comes, our faithfulness to God requires we take the courageous path, not the easy compromise. It's always going to look a little easier. For Daniel, he could have looked back and said, hey, that looks really simple. I mean, just a little bit of bacon there. A little pork chop here. Little rabbit there. But he remained faithful to God's law given to the people of Israel in the Old Testament. The banquet table of Babylon epitomizes the cultural buffet of today. Of immorality, profanity, violence, a culture that wants everything to do with running as far away from God's way and will as possible. What table, what buffet are you dining at? You're saying, well, a little bit of that show, even though I know there's things that do not honor God. I just kind of ignored that thought for a moment. One pastor said, we dare not be entertained by the sins for which Christ died. Is this easy? No way. It's the courageous path, not the easy compromise. But it's the path of faith. And the superior king, who is the ruler over everyone and everything. A path of faith, courageous faith. But God intervenes by His grace. God often intervenes by His grace when we follow Him with faith. Daniel was going to experience some more difficulties. You will experience difficulty. People may oppose you, persecute you, mock you, ridicule you, say all manner of evil against you falsely for His sake, but what's the next word in Sermon on the Mount? Rejoice and be exceedingly glad, for great is your reward in heaven, for so they persecuted the prophets who were before you, of which Daniel was one. Reward comes by God's grace. We have to understand, yes, God delights in honoring those who honor Him, but it's not a wage that we get for our good behavior. It's a reward of His grace because of his mercy on our lives in the first place. That we're in covenant relationship with God doesn't come by our own thinking. It comes by God's kindness, that he opened our eyes and revealed to us his truths so that we could walk in his grace and receive the gifts of his grace. God often intervenes by his grace when we follow him with faith. It may look way more difficult. It's not going to be the path of easy compromise. But God honors those who honor him. I want you to look with me just briefly on the screen. From verse 9 and verse 17, it says this, "Then God granted Daniel loyal love." That's the word for God's unending, unstoppable, always and forever love. In Hebrew, chesed. His covenant relationship that he initiated, God granted Daniel loyal love and compassion before the overseer of the court officials. So that when Daniel stood before the court officials, God poured out his grace, his unstoppable love on behalf of Daniel for the situation. God intervened. Was it because Daniel was great? No, it was because his God was great and his trust was in the great God, Yahweh. And then it says, "Now as for these 4 young men, God gave them knowledge and skill." God gave, God endowed is another way to translate that verb. God endowed them. It's a gift of God's grace because they chose the path of faith to put their trust in the superior king who is ruler over everyone and everything. God delights in honoring those who humbly honor him. It was never about Daniel. It was about Daniel's God. Because Daniel's God is the God who's the righteous judge. God is my judge. Not people. God is your judge. Not earthly kings. God is your king. Not prime ministers or presidents or any such thing. God is your king. Resolve today to remain steadfast tomorrow. Remain faithful to God because he is faithful in his love toward you. That's good news. That's good news. 1924, Eric Liddell bowed out of a race to honor his convictions before God. This became famous in a 1981 classic movie, Chariots of Fire. People thought he was crazy. It was not the easy path. It was a path based upon his convictions in God. And he said, "I must honor my God, so I will not race in that 400-meter trial. I will not do that." He went on to the Olympics, and just before another race, a friend of his slipped him a note. On it was 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 30, and it said, "I will honor those who honor me." Eric Liddell went on to run that 400-meter race and win the gold medal in the Olympics that year. He broke the world record at that time for that 400-meter. What was true of Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, Azariah is true for Eric Liddell, is true for every follower of Christ. And this is from Dr. Michael Breznau from Moody Bible Institute. The Lord delights in honoring those who honor him. So because of his grace in your life, remain faithful to him. Remain faithful to God because he is faithful in his love toward you. Would you bow your knees with me if you're able to? And I want to teach you a little song, a simple little chorus. I give all my worship to you. Just goes like that. I give all my worship to you. No matter the cost or what others do, I give all my worship to you. Let's try that again. I give all my worship to you. I give all my worship to you. No matter the cost or what others do, I give all my worship to you. I give all my service, the same tune. I give all my service to you. Sing it out. I give all my service to you. No matter the cost or what others do, I give all my service to you. I give all my future to you, and I give all my future to you. I give all my future to you. No matter the cost or what others do, I give all my future to you.